All right, good morning, Lakewood. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Enjoying the sunshine? Yeah. We are on our final minor prophet that we are covering this quarter, Micah. Micah is kind of known as like the social justice minor prophet. And I know that word kind of has a bad connotation these days, social justice. But it used to be a very Christian idea, that you're supposed to watch out for the poor, you're supposed to watch out for the immigrant, right? But that is what Micah's main message is, and that's what we're going to get into today. So, the true prophet is filled with power, spirit, justice, and might. These terms seem to be almost synonymous. The prophet is like a fighter, like the man of La Mancha, a Quixote. So that's Don Quixote he's referencing there, who dares to fight for an impossible dream of justice. He is bold and daring, exposing injustice and transgression, for he has faith that good will eventually triumph. The full commentary in the Old Testament, but also Juan Alfararo's commentary that we just read the quote from, I also used for this lesson. So our objectives is to learn the importance of godly leaders in every part of life. Right, to understand who Micah blames for Judah's suffering, and to use Micah as an example for standing up to the culture. Right? So let us go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to study your prophet Micah's words and to learn the lessons that he has for us. And let them resonate in our hearts, Lord, and let them help us to better follow you, Lord, to be more like you, Lord, and to draw nearer to you, Lord. And just be with us as we study your word. In your name, amen. So again, prophets are more preachers, and this is very true for Micah. He is more preacher than poet, like some of the other prophets are. So we're going to have to go through some history. We have been covering Israel's history during this period, but Micah is concerned with Judah, so we need to go over Judah's history. So you can see little Judah down here. He's much smaller than big brother Israel up there. All right. Assyria up here, and Aram. These are going to be the main places in the Philistines that we're going to need to concern us. We're going to be discussing today. So here is the timeline. Micah covers 3 kings of Israel. So he covers Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. This is where he is prophesying at. Uzziah, as you see, had a really big reign, and there was a lot of prosperity under there, and he overlaps, of course, with Jeroboam, where northern Israel was also having prosperity. But under Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, things changed just like they do for the north. So, Micah 1:1 reads, "The message from Yahweh given to Micah of Moresheth during kings Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, received by revelation concerning Samaria and Jerusalem," although mostly Jerusalem. While we have been concentrating on Israel, right, for the last few prophets, Micah's concerns was Judah. The 3 kings mentioned ruled in the second half of the 8th century. Uzziah, who reigned from those dates, is dead. Under his rule, right, things have been going great in Judah, just as they were up in the north, right? Because at this time, Assyria had declined in power, and there's actually an alliance between Judah and Israel. The nation is prospering. Egotistical materialism reigned while morality declined. Now, Judah doesn't worship false gods in this time, but they're not doing things properly still. Land was the chief wealth at the time. The rich were soon gobbling up the poor to create vast estates. We see there both in Micah and Isaiah. And remember, Micah is a contemporary, started at the death of Uzziah and went through Hezekiah, so they are contemporaries. So the poor became powerless and voiceless. Their children sold as slaves and women abused. The authorities were corrupt and allowed these abuses to happen. Judges, priests, and prophets were all complicit. But with Uzziah and Jeroboam's death, things are changing for both Israel and Judah. Under Jotham, Uzziah's son, Assyria's power rose. He didn't reign long, so when his son Ahaz took the throne, he is pressured by Israel and Damascus, who are both vassals to Assyria, to support their rebellion. When Ahaz refused, Israel and Damascus invaded, starting what's called the Israelite-Aramean War of 735 BC. Now Ahaz appealed to Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria for help. The Assyrians crushed both Damascus and Israel. We covered this last time. Israel lost the northern half of their territory and became even more vassals. But to do this, Judah had also become a vassal. So to survive, Judah had to give itself over to Assyria. So in Israel, of course, this eventually led to Hosea's attempt to escape vassalage by aligning with Egypt during the turbulent transition of power as Shalmaneser V took the Assyrian throne. And that led to Israel was then crushed and destroyed fully in 722 BC. This left Judah standing alone. Hezekiah succeeded his father Ahaz, inherited being a vassal to Assyria with a faltering economy. He passed many reforms, like standardizing weights. Merchants were abusing that. He kept secure the two main highways, the Trans-Jordan Highway, which runs on the east side of the Jordan River, and the Way of the Sea that runs up along the Mediterranean coast. And he built up the nation's strongholds, like the cities of Lachish. Like Hoshea, Hezekiah also tried to escape Assyrian vassalage. At the death of Sargon II, he created an anti-Assyrian league of Palestinian and Syrian states. And this led to Sennacherib invading Judah in 701 BC, conquering all her cities and laying siege to Jerusalem herself. But Hezekiah and Jerusalem were spared because Hezekiah trusted in God, right? We read this in Isaiah and in Kings. But Judah lost territory to the Philistines and had to pay a heavy tribute to Sennacherib. So God delivered them, but there were still consequences. So just as Isaiah started prophesying the year King Uzziah died, so did Micah begin his ministry. While Hezekiah came from a priestly family with connections to the royal family, we even found his seal in a dig in Jerusalem next to Hezekiah's seal. Micah was not. He came from the rural village of Morsheth, though he was educated. He was a fearless defender of the oppressed. He had sympathy with poor, seeming to identify with them. He lamented those that stole the poor's land. His words resonated with the king, and this in Jeremiah 26. He preached, and he was effective. A.F. Kirkpatrick wrote Hezekiah's Reformation. Stylistically, Micah is more orator than poet. There is a shared language between Micah and Isaiah, not surprising. The exact date when each of Micah's oracles are told is really hard to figure out. He isn't in order, it doesn't seem. Some are against Samaria, so those have to predate 722 BC. Those against Gath have to predate 711 BC when the Assyrians destroyed the city. Chapter 5 clearly speaks of the 701 Assyrian invasion. So that's you just have to look at the little clues and try to guess where this goes. Micah's name is the shortened version of two different Hebrew names, Michael and Micaiah. However, we know from Jeremiah that it is Micaiah. That's as he's addressed. Your translations will probably just read Micah, but if you look at the underlying Hebrew, it is Micaiah. His name therefore means who is like Yahweh. So his home village is Morsheth Gath, and that's to identify it as the Morsheth that is by Gath. Located on the western and lower side of Judah, about halfway between Jerusalem and the coast. It is identified with modern-day Tel El Judea, and that puts it about 6 miles northeast of Lachish, the second largest city in Judah at the time. So the structure of Micah is a kaleidoscope of ideas that circle back on themselves between tangents. As Martin Luther once wrote about the prophets, they have a queer way of talking, like people who, instead of proceeding in an orderly manner, ramble off from one thing to the next, so you cannot make head or tail of them or see what they are getting at. And the book of Micah is the poster child of this sort of structure. But that's how the Eastern people, they think. They think more in circles. We're very much influenced by the Greek linear thought, and we kind of have trouble with this circular stuff. That's why we don't often see chiasms when they're present, because this is just how the Jewish thought was at the time. So, who are the problems in Micah's time? Who does he think are responsible for all the ills Judah is going for? And he saw 4 powerful groups. The political powers, the princes, elders, military officials. They do not protect the people, but use their power to exploit them. These are not shepherds, but wolves. There's the judicial powers. The judges and elders who dole out justice are not being impartial, but selling their decisions to the highest bidder. And the religious powers, the priests and prophets who served money, not God. Their liturgical rites were empty and meaningless because they not supposed to be lacked moral integrity and ethical behavior. And the economic powers, the rich landowners and merchants who use every means to cheat and deceive the poor. So we see this in Amos that Israel also had these problems, whereas Hosea was focused almost completely on them worshiping false gods. But we see in Judah they have the same problem. So God's case against Judah. Hear, all you people, listen, world and your population, and let the Lord, Yahweh, give evidence against you, the Lord from his holy temple. My computer wants to restart. Sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, ask a question.
So everybody was being bad in their own way?
They were serving,
Is that a simple way?
they were serving themselves and not serving the community and not serving God.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use the word everybody, though.
No, but there are specifically people in power that he is targeting. And obviously we see that Hezekiah listened because he started doing reforms. And like I said, this could have been under King Jotham he made this pronouncement, under King Ahaz. We don't know. This could be at the start of Hezekiah's reign, and this is getting his attention. That's the problem. We don't know when a lot of these oracles take place. Yeah. So anyways, God here is judging the people. He has a case to bring against them. He is, the prosecutor, as you will. And this is also very similar to something we read in Isaiah 3:13, where Yahweh stands ready to present his case. He stands to judge the people. Yahweh is entering upon a lawsuit with the elders and leaders of his people. So you see, Micah and Isaiah, they're both attacking the same problem. For Yahweh is leaving his own place yonder. Down he comes to tread upon earth's heights. Mountains melt beneath him, and valleys crack open, like wax too close to fire, or water cascading down a slope. Just imagine this. He's picturing God stepping on the mountains, and God's glory is so much the mountains are melting. They're running like wax. He's painting a picture here. He's he's wanting to get people's mind. This is really bad. You don't want God to come do this. Jacob's rebellion is the reason for all of this, and the sin of the community of Israel. What is Jacob's rebellion? It can only be Samaria. And what is Judah's sin? It can only be Jerusalem. So, why does Micah say Jacob's rebellion is Samaria? You always thought I was going to tell us? Well, we did cover Amos and Hosea, and they kind of lay out those cases pretty well. Yeah. So Israel did worship on high places, and Samaria didn't have a temple, but it was supporting two cultic sites, one in Bethel in the south and one in Dan in the north, where they built golden calves to worship God as. So that'll be post after the Assyrians destroy them. These will be, of course, the Israelites in the north that stay. They are the forerunners of the Samaritans, the Samaritans, that we see in the New Testament time, and they have they have a complete Pentateuch, the Samaritans, which implies the Pentateuch, by the way, was finished before the kingdom split. So if anyone tries to argue that, the Pentateuch was written post-exile, you have to ask them, why do the Samaritans have the Pentateuch? And while they made their own little changes to it, it's mostly identical, and we have it. So, all right, that's just a tangent. Yeah. So why does Micah say Judah's sin is Jerusalem? That is where the temple is.
Jerusalem was supposed to be God's city, and if they are participating in pagan worship, then they are sinning against the city of Jerusalem, which is God's city.
Yeah, so it is God's city, and if they're sinning there, they are sinning against God. There's no indication there's pagan worship going on in Jerusalem, just yet. That might be more Jeremiah's time. But yeah, you were starting to say something. Right. So he's saying you're no better than Samaria. They set up false idols up there. They're rebelling against God, and you think you're better because you are here in Jerusalem with the temple. But I'm saying you're no better than they are. Right. Any other comments? You wanted to say something, Miss Jackie?
No, I was just going to say that it was those four groups we mentioned earlier were pretty much centered probably.
Yeah, there was a.
So the focus was entirely on themselves and not God.
Yeah, their focus was definitely entirely on themselves. Most of the leadership. Obviously, we have Isaiah. He's a faithful prophet. So obviously not every prophet besides Micah is a problem at this time, but there's probably quite a lot of prophets. Yeah. So I shall make Samaria a ruin in the countryside, plantations for the vines. I shall hurl her stones down the valley and expose her foundations. So this has to be before 722 here. All her sculpted images will be smashed, all her proceeds of prostitution destroyed by fire. On all her idols shall I wreak havoc. For from prostitutes' earnings she did amass them, and to prostitutes' earnings will they revert. So he's accusing them of the same stuff Hosea did. That's not Micah's focus, but we are seeing some of that same language. This is why I must mourn and wail, go about barefoot and half naked, utter a cry of mourning as loud as jackals, a lament as shrill as ostriches. For she will never recover from her scourging, and it will reach Judah too. It will spread to my people's marketplace, right to Jerusalem. So he's looking, I think this is probably right before Samaria's fall, is like, it's done. They're going to be destroyed. And he's grieving it because they're still God's people. And he doesn't want that. And worse, it's going to come to Judah next. We are only 21 years from Sennacherib's invasion, from Samaria's fall to Sennacherib invading Judah. So it is not long at all.
This verse 9 gives an indication of why Jerusalem was regarded as the focus of evil. It doesn't say my people's rulers, it says my people's marketplace. Jerusalem is viewed there as the center of commerce, and commerce was where people were being defrauded.
Yes, that's a good point. He says marketplace, where people are being defrauded, because this is definitely before Hezekiah takes power and starts standardizing weights. So yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Don. So we're going to break down this entire next section after I read through it, because there's a lot of place names and they all mean stuff and they're all important to the text. So tell it not in Gath. Do not weep and sob. In Beth Leprah, roll about in the dust. Get moving, population of Shapher, naked and humiliated. The population of Zanan dare not come out. Beth Hazel is in mourning. It withdraws its support from you. Waiting anxiously for good fortune are Maras population, misfortune sent down by Yahweh himself to Jerusalem's gate. Harness the chariots to the steeds, population of Lachish. That is the main sin of Lady Zion, since in you may be found Israel's rebel ways. Dan, you probably understand why that's said there, right?
These city names have meanings associated with this warning to them.
Yeah.
It does make it easier to remember the meaning.
Yeah, but here, chariots to the steeds. These are not things that Israelites are supposed to have. That means they got technology from Egypt. And that is the sin being talked about here. I really didn't put that in my breakdown, so I want to cover it now. So a dowry must be bestowed upon Moresheth Gath, Micah's hometown. Aki's buildings prove a disappointment to Israel's kings. A new successor will come to you, population of Mareshah. To Adullam will come Israel's nobility. Tonsure yourselves and shave off your hair in mourning for the sons you dote on. Give yourself as big a tonsure as the vultures, since their fate is deportation, leaving you behind. Okay, so what is this all about? This is the area being described here. All the cities mentioned are on here. So this area that is going to be affected. So this is what's called the southern Shephelah. The Shephelah are the foothills of the Judean highlands, so it's where the Judean mountains give way to the coastal plains of Philistia. So it was a place of agriculture and trade. And again, the city names just aren't chosen at random. The meaning of their names are omens themselves of what is going to happen. Now, so we can read a similar account of this invasion in Isaiah 10. Scholars believe this oracle text is talking about Sargon II's invasion of Philistia in either 720 BC or 714 through 711 BC. There were two different times he did this. So Gath is the nearest Philistine city to the Judean Shephelah, and the Judean cities were caught up in the war. So this is one more reason Hezekiah will later attempt to escape Assyrian control, because that's his overlord that just sort of came in and looted his cities. Right? First, Micah sets the tone by quoting 2 Samuel 1:20, "Tell it not in Gath," which is the start of David's elegy over Saul and Jonathan's deaths and Israelites' defeat by the Philistines. Micah is grieving for the destruction of his homeland, just as David grieved for Saul and Jonathan. Beth Laphrah sounds like the Hebrew word for dust, afar, so it's in there, and the city will roll about in it. So it's a city of dust, and it's going to roll about in dust. Shafir sounds like the word for beautiful, and it will be stripped naked in shame and carried off into captivity. Zanan suggests go out, but its inhabitants do the opposite and do not go out to Shafir's aid. Beth Hazel is too busy mourning to help. And I don't think anyone knows what its name means. It probably means something to do with mourning. Marah sounds like bitter things, yet they wait for good things that won't come. And then disaster comes to Jerusalem. The city of peace itself shall know warfare. Lachish, of course, is the second largest city of Judah and its most important military fort. It will later fall to, of course, to Sennacherib in 701 BC, and he decorates his palace with a massive relief depicting its wall. It's like, from longer than that wall over there. It is a massive relief showing him destroying the city with all his siege equipment and how he's bragging about it, right? So the city will pay for Judah's sins, and the strong city will need to use their chariots, horses to flee to safety, not in battle. That is what is being brought about. They're going to run away. So Micah's hometown of Moreshah sounds like betrothed. The city is promised to the invaders. By the way, Sennacherib wrote in his 701 invasion, 46 of Hezekiah's strong-walled towns, innumerable small villages in their neighborhoods, I besieged and conquered. So these are places that, even if this is not talking about a different Assyrian invasion, but the 701, they're going to be conquered eventually. So Mareshah was another fort built to defend Judah from the south along with Lachish, and the name is related to Yoresh, possessor or heir. The city's heir will be its conquerors. And just as the section began with the allusion to David, it returns to Adullam. When David was an outlaw, right, he's fleeing for Saul, other malcontents with Saul flocked to him at the caves of Adullam. Like David, the glory of Israel, which are the rich and powerful, shall flock to the fort of Adullam for refuge. And the grief of this invasion will be so bad, to mourn it, men and women won't just shave the tops of their heads, they will shave their entire heads. They'll be bald like the vulture. And we also see Sargon in his account of this invasion says, I made to come out 200,000, 150 people, young and old, male and female, and counted them as spoils of war. Yeah. So there's also Philistines mixed in with that, so don't just think that's Israel, the Judeans, but that's a lot. So that is what Micah just prophesied for his own home area. Like, things are going to be bad. Alas, for those who think up wrong and lie in bed working out evil, then at break of day put it into operation, using the power that lies in their hands. This is sentiments we see in Psalm 36:4, right? And whenever you see Micah use the word alas, or your translation might say woe, that means the people he's about to talk about are in trouble with God. So, they want land and grab it. Houses, just take them. They do violence to a man in his home, to individuals and what is theirs by ancestral rights. Right? Remember, all the land in Judah and Israel were given to clans, and they're supposed to be theirs always. Even if you sell off your parcel of land, it has to be returned to you at the year of Jubilee. And Isaiah 5:8 also talks about this happening. So this is the message of Yahweh. Now it is my turn to think up against the crowd, this crowd evil, from which you will not free your necks, nor will you be able to walk erect. A time of such evil it will be. Well, they've been plotting. God can plot too. That should scare you.
Yeah.
On that day, folk will raise on your behalf a taunt song. A taunt song is an expression that means like an example or an object lesson. So behalf a taunt song, groaning, moaning, and bemoaning. Ruined, we are ruined. He cancels my people's right to the land. How terrible he should remove it from me. He signs to a renegade the rights to our fields. So these are the common folks that are crying out for deliverance. So you will have no one to put in place the measuring line by lot among the congregation of Yahweh, which implies that all these boundary lines were probably distributed by lot, like your clan got this one, so it'd be fair, right? Yeah.
That's the way that Joshua distributed the land.
So, yeah, okay.
And tribal boundaries, within those tribal boundaries, it was distributed by lot.
Yeah, because that makes it fair. You know, you're like, oh, I got stuck with the bad parcel land. Well, it wasn't us. You know, we didn't scheme against you, right? Yeah. Oh, so what is the root of many evils? Yeah. Abandoning God. Selfishness.
Yeah, the people want things that aren't helpful for other people. So their evil is, I don't care if it's yours, I don't care if it's going to hurt you. Whereas we know through God's view, we love one another. So if you turn that and don't love another person, you'll take their house. You'll say, I'm going to take this land, I'm going to do this. And so to me, the root is we just don't love other people.
Don't love other people. Yeah, that's the root of many evils. Yeah, you just
Proverbs says the love of money is the root of evil.
many evils, I believe. I don't think it's all evils, but it's
All kinds of evil.
yeah. That is what I'm paraphrasing in my question. But yes, so the love of money, not money, the love of money. Because if you love money more than God, you'll do these sort of things to get it. Yeah. Oh, yes, in the back. Yeah, she didn't hear what you said, Keith, and I have already forgotten. I'm sorry.
So if we don't love other people, if we love ourselves and we don't care about other people, we'll take their land, we'll take their kids, we'll take their money, we'll kick them out.
Yeah.
So that is a decision-making process of how we think, of how we look at other people. And it can be rude because we're prostituting ourselves to ourselves or money or other things. And so he uses these different words, prostitute, he uses the word of stealing other people's stuff, those kinds of things. And that's because if we love somebody, we're not going to treat them like that.
Yeah. So I was just pointing, if you don't love one another, you're going to treat them badly. And again, you know, Jesus says the law and the prophets are distilled to 2 commands, right? Love God, love your neighbor. Yeah. So stop your preaching, they preach. They should stop preaching in this vein. Humiliation won't overwhelm us, right? They're so prideful. They're not going to, you can't humiliate them. The community of Jacob is party to the covenant. See, they're special. They're part of the covenant of God. Has Yahweh lost his temper? Is this the way he acts? Do not his promises spell good fortune? Do we not keep company with one who keeps his word? So they're saying, what are you talking about, Micah? We go to the temple. We make our offerings. You know, the priests bless us. We're right with God. You know, what are you, right? But you, like an enemy, attack my people. You strip cloaks off the peaceful from innocent passerbys with no warlike intent. Is there something in the law about taking someone's cloak? I mean, it kind of seems like a minor thing to us, but when you were poor, Like, your cloak is what you slept in at night. You don't have your cloak, you're going to freeze. You know, it gets cold at night in Judah. Women folk among my people you evict from their cozy homes. From their babes you take away forever the glorious heritage I gave them. So these are widows, right? Their husbands are dead, they have babes. You know, the land is their children's, right? And their house is supposed to be theirs. They're raising basically in trust to their child. Nope, they're being evicted. Why? You know, they're women. What are they going to do? That is the idea we have at the time. On your feet, get going. You're not staying here. Because of your moral filth, you will be broken, painfully broken. If anybody who deals in mere wind and deceit were to lie, I shall preach to you about wine and spirits. He would be the preacher for this people. So, what is Micah saying with this verse? Yeah, so Ms. Shaki's point is that people hear what they want to hear, not what is really being said, but that's not, I think, what's being said here. Okay, I'm sorry if I... They don't want to hear bad news. They want to hear good news. They want, yep, they do. That's what we want to hear. We don't want to be told we're bad. We don't want to be told we're sinful. We want to be told that love is love and you should just accept it, right? Yeah. But we're talking about the preacher here, right? He's the one telling these people they're doing okay. He's the one saying like, no, you're good. Just have the wine, have the spirit, you're fine. Right.
It reminds me of the adage, if you believe that, I have beachfront property in the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, so she was mentioning the old saying like, oh, if you believe that, I have beachfront property to sell you in the Mojave, yes. Yeah, so her point is that Micah is preaching the truth, but they don't want to hear it. They want to stay in their delusion that they are right with God, and they're going to go listen to the guy telling them that. They're going to listen to the wolf that is feeding them lies, right, and leading them off to damnation. Yeah. We all have to, watch out for that, right? How do you tell a teacher follows the Bible or not, right? You would know him by his fruits, yeah.
I was at a meeting yesterday, and it was a recovery meeting for a bunch of people, and they asked this man to say a prayer, and I'm thinking, okay, because they do mention God, but they won't mention Christ. But he began, never even acknowledge God, just saying, we thank you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching him, and I'm like, man, you're leaving so much delusion, you're showing me that. And you just sit there and you rehearse it, because you see that they are in such a control place, and they don't even, it's like you take an addict and you give them something else, which is just as dangerous as what they want to do. And it was a really sad moment to watch how that solution is going on with people that really need the truth.
Yeah, so she was just talking about just an encounter with people who are recovering addicts and how they're not being told the real truth, they're being told like a partial truth, and that's leading them into something just as bad as what they were before, and that's what is happening here. Yeah.
So Micah's talking about the people, and he's using an example. But, there's people around that the mere wind is they just talk and talk and talk, and they deceive people, and they're lying. And he's saying, you're a preacher for the people, because that's what you want. That's the kind of people that were there. So he's really describing the people.
Yeah. So yeah, he was just pointing out how the people are just listening to wind and deceit. And wind, I'd have to look it up in Hebrew. It could be habal, which is like also meaninglessness. That's kind of a thing. Wind is usually, if it's not talking about God, it's usually talking about something meaningless or impossible to grasp or pointless. Yeah. So I promise to gather you all, Jacob. I promise to collect up the remnant of Israel. I shall bring them together like sheep to the fold, like a flock in the meadow, bleating in fear of men. One who breaks out will lead the campaign. They will break out, pass through the gate, and go by it. Their king will lead the procession. Yahweh will be at their head. So we have here a promise that God's going to gather the faithful remnant in. So what we're talking about Micah, he's talking about false preachers, and now we're talking about God restoring Jacob, right? He's kind of all over the place. But we see here that their king, God, is going to lead them back. This is probably after the 701 invasion, right? There's going to be a restoration. He's promising things are going to get better. They've seemed to have repented. For whatever reason, Micah or his editor or whoever collected his oracles thought this was the perfect place to put this after his talking about the false preachers. But yeah, something to remember. You know, God is king, Christ is king. He's going to lead us in the end, right? So,
James,
yeah.
how many people, and Keith too, if you want to answer, how many people you think were still being good
I have no idea.
during this time?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
No.
Okay.
There were enough that Hezekiah convinced all of Jerusalem to be faithful to God and not surrender to Sennacherib. When they had a massive army outside their gates, they had no hope of surrender. And the representative of Sennacherib, his general, told them in Hebrew, "Don't be idiots. If you do not surrender, I will massacre every single one of you." And Hezekiah's like, "No, we're going to have faith in God." And they were delivered. So there was a city full of, it was bulging with refugees, by the way. So, everyone was fleeing to Jerusalem. There were people from the north that had already fled after the last invasion. So there was plenty of faithful people eventually. All right, how many?
It seems to me those last two verses were directed at the people who were being oppressed.
Yeah, that's also true. It could have just been for the people being oppressed. Hey, God has not forgotten you. That's also true. Yeah, that's a good reason why it's there. But now we're back to judging people. So for Micah chapter 3 is 3 oracles. They're against 3 different groups. And here's the first one against the leadership. Then I said, "Listen, you heads of Jacob, leaders of Israel's community. You ought to know what justice means." Justice is a big theme in Micah. "Yet you hate good and love evil. You tear off their skin, the flesh of their bones. You are eating my people's flesh, stripping off their skin, chopping up their bones, and cutting them up like meat into a cauldron, like meat into a stew pot." So that's some savage language, yeah. Eating people in this time was a metaphor for oppressing them. We'll see this in Zephaniah 3:3 uses it in the same way. But he is painting a stark picture. This is what you do when you oppress people. You strip away what they have. You force them to grub around for food, They starve. It's like you're consuming them. Then they will cry out to Yahweh, but he will give them no answer. He will hide his face from them at that time in fitting return for their evil behavior. So after you've oppressed my people, you're going to cry out to me for deliverance? I'm going to turn my face away, God says. And you know what's one of the most dire threats God makes in the Old Testament? To hide his face from you. That means he is no longer blessing you. He is no longer looking out for you. And that is what they deserve for their evil behavior. Actually, read the Psalms. Notice how many times psalmists cry out to God to look down at them, to shine his face upon them, right? So just something to keep in mind when you read the Psalms. And Aaron's blessing mentions this back in, right? Aaron's blessing is twice ask God to look upon you. Yeah. This is Yahweh's message for the prophets who lead my people astray, who proclaim peace and plenty when they are given a bite to eat, but launch a crusade against the man who puts no food in their mouths. So they're speaking to the rich and not the poor, is what we're kind of getting at here. As a result, you face night unillumined by visions, darkness unrelieved by divining. The sun will set on the prophets, the day will darken about them. Visionaries will be shamed, diviners confounded. They will all clap hand to mouth because no divine answers come. Which implies these were legit prophets that could have been speaking divine revelations, but they got greedy. And they started selling their divinations. And God's, well, I'm going to take them away. You'll be in the dark now. So good luck on being an accurate prophet then. Not so I, full of power, aided by Yahweh's Spirit, full of justice and valor, ready to charge Jacob with his rebellion, Israel with his sin. So this is Micah saying, hey, I am not like the liars, the frauds, the ones who just tell you what you want to hear. Yes, my message is hard. I just accuse you of being cannibals. But you need to listen because I am full of God's Spirit, full of justice and valor. And he is here to charge you with rebellion and with sin, right? To tell you what you're doing wrong. That's what love is. And not to just let you keep doing what's wrong, but to tell you and try to help you fix it, right? So, should we be silent when we see corruption in leadership? I'm not just talking about in the church, but any form of leadership. Absolutely not. Yeah, so it will be difficult. You know, if there's something corrupt going on at your employment and you stand up to it, you'll probably get fired, you know. But, you know, you challenge political leaderships, you might face some repercussions. You might get audited suddenly. I know that happened about a decade ago. Students get poor grades, yeah. But we're not called to just go with the culture.
We've been told we're going to suffer persecution.
Yeah, Jesus said, if you follow me, you will be persecuted because they hated me first, right? Yes.
So we should be against the corruption. And his example was that the prophets said, if somebody isn't giving me something, then I'm not going to do it. Well, it's the same corruption because they're giving us something, so we allow it to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem, is we allow it to continue because they keep giving us something.
That's true, yeah.
We
Like,
gotta stop taking what they're giving us and stand up. And sometimes that means hardship.
yeah.
They're not giving us food anymore. Now we're going to be hungry.
Yeah, that's true. That's one way you become dependent on something. You're given something. You know, your employer pays you, right? And that makes you dependent on your employer. And that's scary, right? Giving up your income, yeah. When we don't speak up, that makes us corrupt too. Pharisees. Right. So let's end with a prayer. Heavenly Father, again, thank you for this time to study Micah and to understand about justice, true justice, not the corrupt justice that men often produce. And just help us to have the courage to be like Micah and to stand up for, those who are being oppressed, for those who are suffering, Lord. And just be with us as we go out into the world in your name. Us as we go out into the world in your name. Amen. Amen.